Our speaker this morning is Dr. Kathleen Schock, who's an instructor at Fresno City College, where she leads the journalism program and is advisor to the Rampage, Fresno City College's student-run media organization. Before her career in education, it's quite impressive, Kathleen worked as a broadcast journalist for NBC News in New York City. I know, I said impressive. And locally at CBS 47 and KVPR. She also worked in public relations at Pelco and Fresno State. Her community involvement includes serving on boards of Fresnoland, yay, the Journalism Association of Community Colleges, and the Institute for Media and Public Trust. She lives in Fresno with her husband and their 2 cats, and we don't have their names, so we're gonna just go ahead and believe her. So please welcome with me Kathleen Schock.
So my boys are named Simon and Otto, so just, yeah. I cannot tell you what an honor it is to be with you today, and the fact that you are interested in hearing about the work that we're doing at Fresno City College and the future of this profession that I hold so dear. So thank you so much for having me. So I'll start out by just calling out the elephant in the room, which is, yes, it is a really scary time for a student to decide to pursue a career in journalism for a lot of reasons. The media is under attack in ways that I never thought was possible, and it's really terrifying. So I have a bunch of statistics. They're a real bummer. I'm not going to read them for the sake of time. I think you all get it. But yes, all of these things are happening. Journalists are being detained, arrested, subjected to violence. It's a lot. Then there's the economics of our profession, which have just completely changed. You know, how do we get people, in a world where information is free, why would somebody pay for information that they frankly probably don't even want? So we've got to figure that out. You know, then on top of that, we've got this artificial intelligence monster that's looming over our head, right? Boo, right? We don't know what that's going to mean for us. So there's just an enormous amount of uncertainty. So when I, start to feel my blood pressure rise and I get, breathing really heavy, what I focus on are the things that haven't changed. And that's the core principles that drive our work, the codes of ethics that we observe as journalists. The same codes of ethics that I was taught by my professors are the ones that I teach to my students that they will take into their careers and pass on to the next generation. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through those codes of ethics and give you some examples of how they've guided the work in our newsroom on campus. But just a little bit about the newsroom. So the Rampage is a student-run publication, and when I say student-run, I mean student-run. They have complete editorial control over what stories to cover, who's going to cover the story, how the story is going to be covered, and when it is ready for publication. I have no say. So as the advisor, I am in many ways the least powerful person in the room, okay? But, I work really closely with my students, and so that's why these codes of ethics are so foundational, because that's going to help them make decisions when I'm not in the room to guide them. And then one more thing about the Rampage that I think makes me love it the most is that it is open to everyone. When you were doing your welcome, it made me think about that's exactly how it is at the Rampage. All you have to do to join the staff is enroll in Journalism 11A. That's it. So students come in with the widest array of backgrounds you could possibly imagine. And the magic that happens in the newsroom is when the student editors can identify each person's unique talent, gift, interest, and find a way to plug that into the organization in a way that benefits them and the organization as a whole. It is the living embodiment of DEI, without any of the language being on my course description or anything. We just live it. It's great. Thank you. Okay, so the first code of ethics that we live by, and I should say these are established by the Society of Professional Journalists. They are the gold standard in our industry, and they're practiced, these guidelines are practiced in any newsroom that's worth its salt. So the first code is to seek the truth and report it, which I think of as the code of ethics. But it's actually a lot more complicated than it sounds, because the truth can be a really slippery thing, and it can mean different things for different people. And on top of that, when we go out to report a story, there are a million decisions that need to be made that are going to shape how that story is received by the audience. Decisions around who we talk to, who we don't talk to. Decisions around what kind of language do we use to describe things? What kind of images do we select to accompany that story? All of these things are deeply important. So I'm going to give you a story that actually involves all of you a little bit. So last year, we were paid a visit, we meaning the Central Valley, were paid a visit by the Westboro Baptist Church. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, so so we all know who they are. We don't need to waste time on that. Is that fair? Okay, they're a group that goes around the country and does anti-LGBTQ protest. They say some very, very, very vile things about that community. So one of the protests that they did was at Roosevelt High School, and my newsroom, my team, decided they wanted to cover it. And so the young man that they were sending out to cover the event came to me beforehand, and he said, oh, I should also say, so this is the good news. So yes, the Westboro Baptist Church came out to do their little protest, but a huge crowd of counter-protesters, I should say, came out in support of the LGBTQ community and totally overshadowed the Westboro Baptist Church. So before the event, my student said, hey, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to talk to the counter-protesters, I'm going to get video, all that stuff. I'm also going to talk to the Westboro Baptist Church people. And I said, let's talk about that. They are a hate group. And that's not me saying that. That's the Anti-Defamation League. That's the, Southern Poverty Law Center classifying them that way. Do you want to use your platform to elevate their voice? And the student I was talking to happens to be a member of the LGBTQ community. And so there was also a part of me that went full mama bear and didn't want them to be subjected to that. So we had a conversation as a newsroom. And what the students decided is that, yes, they did want to talk to them, but that they would use care and discretion with what they were going to do with that information when it came time to report it out. And so what they ultimately did is they did include a quote from the Westboro Baptist Church in their story, but it was contextualized. It was toward the end of the article. It was sandwiched by context and by the voices of the counter-protesters, including your very own Reverend, who is quoted in the article. So I feel like they did a good job of accurately reflecting what happened, giving a voice to both sides, but doing it in a way that was balanced and that minimized harm to the community that it was affecting, which takes me to my next code of ethics, which is minimize harm. Now notice I don't say do no harm, because the telling of the truth sometimes causes harm. It just does. But I tell my students all the time, we are people first and journalists second. And so that's what guides us. So, short story, and I won't go into too many details because it's really, really sad. But we had a young woman die on our campus a few years back. And so my reporters, they covered the story. It was a big story for them. And they reported it really, really well. I was really proud of the work that they did to verify her identity, to get a sense of who she was and her light and her life and those who loved her. So they published their story, and shortly after, one of the reporters is contacted by the family of the young woman who died. And the family said, please take her name from the article. We don't want her name published. And there's reasons for that that I won't get into, but so we had a conversation, as we do. And half of the newsroom said, no, she was a member of our campus community, and we went so far as to verify her identity with the coroner's office. We want to include her name. It is part of the story. But the other half of the newsroom said, at what cost? Do we really feel comfortable continuing to inflict harm on a family that is grieving? So they took her name off of the story. And it's a decision that honestly, I don't think most newsrooms would have done. But I was really proud of my students because I think it speaks to their kindness. But I think it also is an acknowledgement of the fact that they are deep members of the community that they report on, and they know that in order to maintain trust with their audience, they need to be responsive to their needs. Okay, so the next code of ethics is to act independently. So we need to avoid any conflicts of interest, real or perceived. So, for example, there's no money exchanged between us and somebody we're covering, right? They don't pay us, we don't pay them. I go so far as to tell my students, if you're interviewing someone and they want to buy you a coffee, politely decline. I want no conflict of interest. It's real cut and dry when it comes to money. It's real murky when it comes to the expressions of our opinions outside of work. So, the standard would always be, or that I was taught, was that, journalists don't endorse candidates, they don't put, bumper stickers on their car, they don't express their personal opinions in any way, so that we are free to report without that burden. I will say that's changing. The world is changing. What things that I don't find political, other people do. So it's murky. So, okay, I have a student, awesome student. He was really activated when the war broke out in Gaza. And he wanted to use his platform with the Rampage to tell stories about the protest, to tell stories about the Palestinian community in Fresno. But he also wanted to protest and put his body on the line in solidarity. And so we had a pretty heavy talk, and he really pushed, he was like, why can't I do both? And I said, you can, but there's a consequence. Will your reporting be diminished if people know how passionate you are on this topic? And so we went around and around, and ultimately he decided that he can make a bigger impact as a reporter with his stories than he could as an individual protester. But it's a dance that, every journalist has to navigate. Early in my career, and I remember talking to my professor about it, he said, I had a pride sticker on my water bottle, and he said, you better not take that to a job interview. And I said, if there's a newsroom that has a problem with a sticker, then I don't belong in that newsroom. Now, it's never been a problem for me, but it's a tricky thing to navigate, or can be. And then the last code is to be accountable and transparent. So that means when we screw up, and it's when, not if, we're humans, we have to acknowledge that mistake and fix it. So that's why I'm sure you've seen corrections at the bottom of articles. That's why instead of just fixing it online, journalists should take the extra step to acknowledge that they got it wrong first. It is deeply humbling. Okay, so this is kind of a funny story. So my very first semester as the advisor, students were put out a print edition of the paper. I should say the Rampage it's therampageonline.com if you want to check out their work online, follow them on social media, and then they also do print. Okay, so they put out a print edition, and they design it in InDesign using a template, and the template has like fake language in it, right? Well, a couple of years before, one of the students thought it would be funny to take the fake language in the template and make it a little spicy, a little racy, okay? So they put out the print edition, and in one of the layouts, there was what we call a pull quote. So that's when you see like a single quote that's in big font that's kind of next to the rest of the article. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so there was one of those, and the quote was from a very high-ranking administrator on campus. And so they had the quote right, they had her name right, but where her title should have been, it said, "Some schmuck." It was real bad. Like, you know that knot you get in your stomach when you screw up? Like, imagine a whole room full of kids with like that knot. Like, you could just feel it in the air. It was like thick. Okay, so they contacted this woman and apologized, and she did not have a sense of humor about it at all. But they knew that they had to do more than just apologize. So for the next print edition, they dedicated their editorial to explaining what happened, how it happened, apologizing for it, and detailing the steps that they were taking to make sure that nothing like that ever happened again. Okay. So a couple days later, we're walking across campus, and we ran into the college president. And I was with a couple of my students, and I could just feel them tense up because they knew she was going to come over and say something to them about it. So she walks over to them and she goes, "You screwed up. Bad. But you owned up to it. You took accountability and you apologized sincerely. And in doing so, you demonstrated a level of civility that many of the grown-ups on this campus could learn a lot from." And so they walked away and their chests were all puffed out. They felt great. It was a bad screw up, but it was a great learning opportunity. So those are our codes, right? That's it. Those guide every decision we make in our newsroom. And I've always known journalistically that these codes, be accountable and transparent, minimize harm, seek the truth and report it, all these things help make great, good, ethical journalism. It wasn't until I became a teacher that I learned they also help to make good, ethical people. So I was just at a conference in Wisconsin for journalism educators, and one of the speakers is a staff attorney for CNN, but before that, he did a lot of legal work supporting student media. And he had just published an article about student media, about journalism, and he read an excerpt from it, and I'm just going to close with this excerpt because I think he says it better than I possibly could. He writes, "If you set out with a blank page to design a civics course meeting the challenges of the 21st century, here's what it might look like. Students would be encouraged to examine and debate current events, focusing on close-to-home events salient to their daily lives. They would learn to be critical consumers of online information, looking for signs of bias or unreliability. They would develop the discernment to identify high-quality information about issues of public concern and to build effective arguments based on verifiable facts. This optimally effective civics course is no fantasy. It exists today, and it is called journalism." Thank you.